quite excited about this one. So I'm going to put a oil pressure gauge in the Beamer. I've got myself a little cheap casing to mount it on. Quite smart looking oil pressure gauge. Try and get it in the light so you can see it properly. It's quite smart looking. It's got a light in it as well. I've got the pressure sender. I've got a new pressure sensor to put in. Might as well, seeing it's only about £5 or £6, seeing as it's off. Then I've got some places call them different things, just an adapter so I can plug the oil pressure sensor in and the pressure sender into the side. And yeah, lots of cable, lots of different cable attachments. So hopefully got quite an assortment there, so I'm bound to have the right one. So on top of the parts you don't need a whole lot of tools, to be honest. These aren't really tools, but good selection of copper washers, good selection of electrical connectors. I haven't actually got the big ones with me, but some big vice grips. Got 3 different sizes. They're pretty handy to undo the pressure sensor. You got some cable. Can't remember what gauge I got. But use your own initiative there. Don't really need anything too thick, but wouldn't go too thin either. Good tool for cutting and stripping and crimping and everything. And some big sockets. The new pressure sensor was 22mm. I think the old one was about 23, but I actually used the bigger vice grips to get the original pressure sensor off. Yeah, just a selection of spanners and sockets. But yeah, you need some big ones, especially when you tighten the new sensor into the adapter. So for the power supply for my gauge, I bought one of these. I forget what they're called, but you basically hijack a power supply to an existing part of your car. Right, so what we want to do first is take the intake off, the intake scoop off, remove the air filter by just undoing the 2 bolts and pulling them out. Then if you undo the 2 bolts, if I help by pointing the camera out, then you undo the 2 bolts on the oil filter housing on the side, so you can move the power steering reservoir out of the way. And then, I don't know where I can see it, it's a bit dark in there, but that's so you can see 2 sensors. The easy one to get to, I believe, is the oil temperature, and then the one down in the depths is the oil pressure switch. Okay, so I've unplugged the alternator, the oil temperature cable, the oil pressure cable, just to get as much space as I can. The new one I'm putting, the new oil pressure sensor I'm putting in is a 22mm hexagon on it. Which, so I tried the 22 on the old one, but it seems a bit bigger. I haven't got a 23, so the thing that I found managed to get it undone was not sure what it's exactly called, whether they're mole grips, but anyway, so I've got a few different sizes of these. So the biggest one managed to clamp onto it. Came undid pretty easy. Haven't got a lot of room to work with, but yeah, undid pretty quick. So I've put the the new oil pressure sensor into the adapter. It comes with a washer as well. So I'm going to try and get that in. I've got a washer on it. I'm hoping once it's tight, this hole is facing outwards for the sender unit to screw in from this side. If not, I'll have to maybe add. Yeah, it's almost there. Typically the hole's facing slightly down. Maybe if I turn it a bit, it might end up the right way. Let's just get the 22mm spanner on it. Sorry, it's not 22. What size is it? Oh, so yeah, the pressure sender, the pressure sensor is 22. The actual adapter I put on is smaller. I have to go and find a spanner. Right, so let's check that the sensor's in nice and tight on the adapter. I've got a deep 22 socket on the sensor, and then just a 90mm spanner on my adapter. Not sure what the torque values are, but just done that fairly tight. Just use your own judgment on that. Alright, so while my camera had stopped recording, I tried screwing this on. Found that with the one washer the hole didn't quite line up to where the space is to really get the sender unit in. So what I've done is put a second washer on, which seems to allow the hole to be sort of pointing upwards a bit and towards the like the MAF sensor. It's quite fiddly. Try not to drop it in there. So when it's hand tight, the hole's not quite in the right place. It's kind of pointing at about 2 o'clock. Alright, so prepared to get pretty annoyed with this. It takes a lot of trial and error to get the adapter in the right place. I've used 2 copper washers. I suggest you buy a big pack of them because I suppose because of the tolerances when they're made, some are slightly thicker and thinner than the others. So you have to keep trying them until you get a combination of washers, so that you end up with the oil sender port pointing in that direction. So it's not quite halfway between 1 and 2 o'clock. Slightly nearer 1. Don't know whether this camera angle properly shows it. So that's been fully tightened. I don't know what the torque settings are, so I've just done it until it's sensibly tight. You can see the surface just to the left of the hole, or just above it. It's not quite horizontal, it's leaning off to the left. So yeah, the hole is probably nearer 1 o'clock than 2. At that point you're able to screw the sender unit into it. this pipe gets in the way, so you end up having to pull that away with one hand while you screw with the other. And there's also there was a little clip, just you can see the bit of it there, which is supposed to have some of these looms in it. That gets in the way, so I just snipped it off to get it out of the way. And then I can actually screw the sender unit in now. But yeah, I'd definitely recommend buying a big selection of copper washers, and hopefully you'll be able to find a combination which allow you to have the port facing that direction. If you don't, then you probably have to file one down ever so slightly, or yeah. So good luck. Yeah, don't forget to put the plug back on your oil pressure sensor. Yeah, I keep putting the sender unit on and then forgetting. So yeah, I've actually taken the sender unit back off so I can plug put the plug back into the new pressure sensor. So what I've done now is I've run a cable I've actually gone in through, actually let me get up. Okay, try not to get attached to the car. I've run a cable through there, I've taken the plastic trims off, and then run it in through the inside of the door, and then through the insulation, the rubber bits that sort of, I suppose, stop the air noise, stop the road noise. There's a lot of fiddling around. I've actually discovered it's far easier to undo this bracket here. So you've got two like the star-shaped bolts on it, and then one 10mm bolt on the side. So now I can plug in the sender unit, because yeah, typically as you tighten it up, the output from the sender unit gets behind the bracket. So yeah, I've got that plugged in, and I'll put the bracket back on. I'm going to use one of these to power the gauge. I forget what they're called, but they basically hijack an existing power supply. So I'm going to I believe, just a bit of trial and error, I figured out number 6, which is the mirror in the driver's overhead visor. That's controlled by the ignition, so I've hijacked that power supply. So as you can see, I haven't got it fitted yet. I'm just doing a bit of a test run as I turn the ignition on. I can't really see that well. Let me turn it around a bit. Actually, let me turn the light off on the camera, if I can. Nope. Okay. So I've just done a little trial fit. So as you can see now, when I turn the ignition on, the light comes on the gauge. I've started it up already as well, and it went up to about just between 3 and 4 bar, which I think is about right on idle. I'll film it again once I've got it fitted properly. Okay, my gauge came with wiring instructions. You can see what's pin 1 on this diagram. It's going to the sender unit, which is effectively attached to the chassis. And then you can see pin 3 at the top, which just goes to the chassis. And pin 2 on the right, which is going to my power supply. So I've wired that all up. It's a bit misleading because I've only had red or black wires, so I've got the earth and the power supply on red wires. I've just put a bit of black tape around the earth one. wired the bulb directly to the chassis connector and the power supply one. That's all ready to go. I've just cut the wires probably about 8 inches and then just taped them together so I can feed it into the gauge casing. It's got a little hole at the back, so I need to feed them through, and then I've got connectors and all the ends of my wires ready to be crimped on. So there's the 3 cables crimped on. I've put my gauge inside the holder. It's only a cheap cheap eBay one. I think you can either, you've got like a sticky pad, or you've got 2 tiny little screws. I'm just going to try it with the sticky pad first. If it doesn't last, then I'll just screw it in. I'm looking to put it roughly there, just kind of in my eye line above the steering wheel. Alright, remember to plug everything back in. So I had to plug this back in, the alternator, and the oil temperature sensor, and then obviously the oil pressure sensor should be plugged in. You should have done that already. Now I'm just going to try and run this wire a bit tidier underneath this rubber. I've also just, rather than trying to, it's a bit fiddly for me to get to anything inside the car, looking for a chassis point on earth. So I've used this one here. I'm just going to run the cable in. I'm actually using a red cable because the sender unit's using a black one, so I've only got black or red. So yeah, I'm going to make these a bit tidier, put them underneath this rubber stuff. Alright, so I've fed them through from the engine bay, and just through here, and then if you just pull the trim away on the inside of the door, you can feed it through under that trim, so you can't actually, so it doesn't get trapped by the door or anything. It just literally comes straight from the engine bay and then disappears underneath the rubber trim. You can push that back in. So there's my signal and chassis leads. Well, I've tidied it up a little bit. Put these rubber bits back in. And then yeah, just run the cable, just any excess cable down the back here, and I've just run it through the bit above the engine that's got various cables in it, and then just disappears into this compartment and back out, and then off it goes down to the sender unit. So I think it looks tidy enough. I mean, if it was your everyday car, you probably would do it a bit tidier, and you'd properly run it through the bulkhead. But seeing as it's only going to be a track car, I'm just doing it kind of half tidy, but it'll do for me. Just got to stick the front half of the intake back on. And that's it, I think. Okay, so I've moved the camera up to my eye line. I can't actually start the car at the moment because I'm in my garage. Just to give you an idea of how it looks. Here we go. So I think it looks pretty smart. Okay, so this is the the oil pressure gauge in action. I think 7. I went for like a scale that went up to 7 bar. Because I think on idle, when you start the car, it sits about 3,500. Sorry, 3.5 bar. I did this mod so I can keep an eye on the oil pressure. I want to do the upgrade on the oil pump, but until then, at least when I'm tearing around a track, I can see if there's any oil problems. Whether you'd see that before your oil light came on, don't know, but there we are. Should give me some kind of peace of mind if there's a sudden drop in oil pressure, or I suppose if there's some kind of blockage and there's high oil pressure as well, so can't know. Cheers for watching, peace, like and subscribe, cheers.